Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
FM in Nairobi and of course around the country, the region and the world. Our live streams are up on YouTube, Facebook and on X, and also our audience on KTN. We're going to come at you every way we can, and in this case so that we can all be part of the conversation. This hour we're going to be looking into issues surrounding the implementation of the 10-point agenda and the NADCO report. Joining us this morning is the chairperson of that committee to oversee the implementation, and that's Dr. Agnes Zani, and she joins us in the Situation Room this morning. Good morning, Dr. Zani. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Fine, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you very much.
You're in the hot seat this morning.
Okay.
And we're glad that you could be here today because, of course, you know, there are many questions. And March 7th is fast approaching.
That's why we're here, to do exactly that.
Karibu
and
sana.
Inform and explain.
Yeah.
Very important.
Thanks for doing that. Before we do that, as we normally do, we go around the African country every week, African continent every week. We land in a different country and we come back with their proverbs. And then we give you the delightful job of interpreting that proverb.
Yes.
Dennis will tell us where we are this week. We'd love to hear from you.
Today we are in Cabo Verde.
Okay.
Cape Verde, a beautiful country. They have beautiful beaches, and tourism is part of the country's greatest economic pillar. But that aside, also citizens who live outside the country send in remittances and help push the economy. And the economy as well, their currency is pegged to euro to help with dealing with inflation in the country. But this is the proverb as well that we get from Cabo Verde. He who travels values home. He who travels values home. How would you interpret it?
West, east, south, north, home is best. You will travel, you'll see cultures, you'll enjoy what you see. But there's something about home, the cultural connections, the social economic connections, the blood connections. There's just a way you feel like as though you're back in the womb, right? Ain't it? So that's my interpretation, I think.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Makes a connection as though you're back in the womb. I wish I could remember how that looks like.
We don't know.
Some people will say you actually can.
Yeah?
It's just that you can't express
can't
it, but that you
express
can
it.
actually remember
Yeah.
that.
I
But your
hear.
mind doesn't transfer it
And
to
even if you're with, they
expression.
say, even when you're in the womb, you can hear, you can connect. And by the time
Yeah.
you come, you know your mother's voice. It's a
Yeah.
safe place,
It's a safe
whichever
place.
way we look at it.
True.
Indeed.
True.
All right. Inside the NADCO report, consensus, compromises, contentions, what we're dealing with here. Let's look at, first of all, the mandate of this committee. And you being the chairperson, what have you been established to do?
It's a very broad mandate and probably much more broader than we had anticipated. The mandate is to look at the NADCO report in its entirety. And then look at the various issues in the NADCO report, starting with issues of electoral justice and related matters, specifically dealing with the reconstitution of the IBC that already has happened in the IBC Act of 2024, signed on 10th July. We're looking at key other issues like boundaries delimitation, which is very important. We're in the 15th year, so Article 87 of the Constitution, the timelines for boundaries has already surpassed. And, proposals, for example, in the report that legislation can come up from a National Assembly just to expand the deadlines, because without the boundaries delimitation, it's going to be difficult to have the election. But there's a provision for that away from the referendum issue. There is a proposal that has been given that can actually unlock that.
Oh, they've already said they're not going to do it.
Sorry?
They said they're not going to deal with anything boundaries.
Oh, they have already.
So they've said this already. The
very
IEBC,
definite.
has been very clear that they're
Yes.
not
Time.
going to have the time
Yes.
or the resources to deal with
Yes.
anything boundaries.
It's
So
a
forget
very-
about it before the election.
It's a very, very broad task. But regardless, I think it will be very important still to have that legislation in place at one point or another. And they can actually just, go to the other provisions. For example, if legislation is put and fast-tracked at the National Assembly and the Senate, then that can also fit into a legislative framework, so that later on, because we're a country that can easily go to court, we can say this election happened without the boundaries delimitation. That should have been done, because the last one was in 2012, and the next one should have been between between after 8 and 12 years. That gives us about 2024. Okay. That's when we should have had the other one. And then we have the audit of the 2022 election, which is a big issue. Outstanding constitutional matters, especially Article 43. This is the article that deals with social and economic rights and the social and economic bill that has been proposed, just to ensure issues of housing, issues of education are all sorted and put into place. The no more than 2/3 legislation, which now I think we have bills both in National Assembly and in the Senate, and generally the issue of inclusivity across the board in terms of ethnic identity, in terms of PWDs should still have the opportunity to be in these various spaces. Then the third big area is fidelity to political parties. And today morning, after this, I'm going to Westlands to meet with a team of the committees, meeting with a team of members from political parties to keep having these discussions. Some key recommendations coming in terms of the agenda, the party lists that are coming, how they should be constructed. There should be a methodology that's put into place, and also fidelity to political parties, which will allow that if you're in a political party and you move away from that political party, that you cease to be a member of the political party, that rather than going through to the next election. So these are the proposed legislation. And then the next is the entrenching of the funds, the NGCDF, NGNGAF, and the Senate Oversight Fund. And then the last is the official leader opposition and also the prime cabinet secretary position. That is the raft of all the NADCO issues. And remember, I'm just giving the main titles, and within their sub issues there to be dealt with. The NADCO report of 2023 gave recommendations. We're taking these as actions or required actions that need to be happening. And all these are in the report. So we have put them out in this very big booklet here in terms of everything has been encompassed there. Then we move to the 10-point agenda. So at the MOU signing on the 7th of March 2025, there was a notion that it's very, very important 2026 because 2025 because 2026 is going to be the first anniversary. So a raft of issues, especially after the escalation of issues during the financial bill. And the loss of life that happened during, and then the two leaders. So this is an initiative from the two biggest political parties, ODM and UDA, in trying to assess these issues, and they came up with a memorandum of understanding that there are certain issues that must be discussed before we can be able to move forward, and these issues are the NADCO report itself in its entirety, and this now becomes our mandate. And then the 10-point agenda, moving to inclusivity, the issue of inclusivity, the issue of devolution and ensuring that there's no clawback. Where are we getting our key performance indicators and how to scope across this issue is from the MOU itself. So when we move, for example, to the issues of inclusivity, issues of the 2/3, we're going back to what the MOU has said should happen.
It's interesting because the very first item on the 10-point agenda is the full and entire implementation, not suggestion, not study, implementation of the NADCO report in its entirety.
Exactly.
That's number one.
Exactly.
I would ask how, I mean, you told us that you've looked into it, you've put it into a pamphlet, you've looked into a booklet. How far is one from the implementation of the NADCO report?
So,
because the NADCO report, as you said, talks about certain things.
Yes.
When it talks about reform of key recommendations of the NADCO report talk about governance and political reform. Then you're talking about the IEBC right off the bat, constitutional and legal reform, establishment of key state offices of the leader of the official opposition. I'm just going to take those two. Office of the leader of the opposition is one of the key specifications in the NADCO report. Just that one. How far would one be from the establishment of that, for example?
When you ask that question and ask it to the committee that was established August to March, clearly the implementation is not on this committee. What we have interpreted our mandate to be is that the interpretation, all that should have been happening. For example, if this is an issue for the official position and this is a bill that might need a referendum at the end of the day, that is a process for Parliament. So what have we done? We have looked at each of the various actions that are required, who are the primary, and this is very, very important, and this is why we explain it to Kenyans so that they understand. Because when we go to the public rallies, they're saying, oh, from August up to March, what have you done? What has happened? Now, the NADCO report is 2023. It was tabled at Senate 21st of February and National Assembly 22nd. Primary bearers, official bearers and responsibility bearers are the executive office of the president, the various ministries, and that's why you've seen us talking to the various ministries, asking them these questions and asking them, where are you on this particular matter?
What do they say? I'm curious.
So let me first explain, because I think it's important. So we're asking them for each of these issues. We're talking to the independent commissions, we're talking to the controller of budget, we're talking to the auditor general, we're talking to all these, we're talking to the council of governors and saying, for example, on the clawback of devolution, which should not happen, what have you done to protect it? Because they are the official office bearers, they're the primary duty bearers. And then they will tell us, we have reached here, we've reached here. How are we doing that? We've consolidated the questions and the indicators for measurability of those specific questions. We have set teams, we've set out memorandum guides to each of the various people, including recently, you might have seen, we were talking with the various principal secretaries and asking them within your docket, for each of your dockets, these issues fall within your domain. What have you done about it? They're going to tell us in their memoranda that will come back to us, and we'll report. Why will this be important? Because for the first time, we have a report that is being followed through rather than it just being there. Some issues, for example, have not been touched. Some of them have been touched. So we will be able then, as a committee, overseeing, the keyword is overseeing the implementation. So we are implementers, but secondary implementers, because the domain for action from the NADCO report is on the duty bearers.
So one would then proceed to, because one of the agendas under the NADCO report now would be electoral governance report, right?
Yes.
Why do I bring that up? Because already there was the need for restructuring and constitution of IEBC, where now we have IEBC commissioners in place.
Yes.
But then again, there is the second key item, which was to audit the 2022 presidential election.
Exactly.
And with that now, knowing very well with the political situation in the country, and you're heading to 2022, where are we with that? Because full implementation of NADCO report, especially to that specific segment, one would hope that we get to audit the presidential election, deal with the issues that are there in 2022 before we go to 2027. Is that a concern to the committee?
It is a concern.
And where are we with that?
It is a concern to the committee. It is clearly indicated that was one of the things, and then we've broken it into required action. This is audit of the 2022 general election. There was a committee of experts first that was to be put in place. I think 6 months immediately after the NADCO report. We are how many months later? So we'll be asking who is the person who should have done it. For example, we have responsibility for that. Parliament, the majority and minority coalitions to appoint panel. You see? So majority and minority coalitions, when we're speaking to them, we're asking them, there was this panel that should have been put into place, consisting of 6 experts. Which 6 experts? What have they done? 21 days after the adoption of the NADCO report. The panel to jointly appoint a reputable firm and a consortium or a consortium firm to undertake the evaluation, amend Elections Act to provide scope of the evaluation, financing and reporting after the general election under Article 88 4H of the COK. Responsibility, Executive Office of the President, that gives us now a memorandum guide. So in the memorandum guide, for example, if we're doing a memorandum guide to a commission, and these are the critical issues, we're asking that commission all the critical issues, including even some that are not necessarily in their domain, but they can have a say about it. For example, they can tell us, in their experiences, why hasn't this happened and how can it happen? The responsibility as well for that, we have here State Department for Parliamentary Affairs, the National Assembly and Senate, the National Treasury, and IBC. So from this template, we are able to work the memorandum guides with the relevant questions to each of these plus others. So for example, we're looking at the State Department for Parliamentary Affairs. Their memorandum guide will have this issue of the audit. It'll have other issues, for example, on key legislation. Where is this legislation? Has it passed from Senate to National Assembly? Where indeed is the bicameral relations legislation, which should clear the hurdle of legislation as it moves from one house to another? And I'll give you an examples of the elections offences amendment bill that passed through the Senate and it went to the National Assembly. So we were checking on where is that bill at the moment, because it hasn't been accented to. So we can now come as secondary implementers, if you wish, or in terms of implementation, and ask, where is this piece of legislation? Why is it held up? Then, from identifying what the issue is, we now push for its implementation.
Many would say that NADCO report and the committee as is, with all the recommendations that you've come up with, and the different officers that need to implement this, there is a sense that there is no urgency.
Why do you say that?
This? Because
Yes.
because 6 months, where are we today?
Yes.
From a Kenyan who does not have access to this information, it's the reason why they ask, okay, fine, since you're formed, what are you doing? Because whilst you've done the heavy lifting of making sure that everybody who's involved is doing their work, one asks the question, fine, where are we?
Yes.
What's happening? So one would always look at the NADCO committee and say, I'm sorry, but there's nothing you're doing.
Yes.
So how are we then what must we do to treat this as an urgency before the next election? Because we are going to the next election without auditing the 2022.
That's very, very important. And therefore, when you're asking, for example, the NADCO report 2023, since 2023, remember we're in 2026, so that's how many years? About 3 years, I think. They're in between.
You've had like around 6 months times 2.
Yes. Yeah. And then now the committee comes in place from August. Okay, so we started. First of all, we've got to conceptualize. We've got to get the required action. We've got to go through the process of understanding where are we going to be able to find where the clog is, where are the issues. And remember, it is a raft of stakeholders that we're dealing with, 208 stakeholders whom we've sent, because each of these touches on this. Remember, our MOU says the full implementation of the NADCO report and the 10-point agenda. That's only on the NADCO report. We haven't moved to the 10-point agenda yet, where we're going to deal with corruption, where we're going to deal with... So it's a big chunk of work. And I think this is why, especially when we've gone to the public forums, we've explained and they've understood. Because what is our mandate? At the end of the day is to identify and say, on this issue, for example, if you look at various issues that are very, very key, for example, the austerity measures that have been put, for example, reduced travel budget by 50%. These are to the public offices. SRC to review and reduce daily subsistence down by 30%. Have to travel the economy and not... So we now go and get the data and say, oh, have you achieved this? We go to the controller of budget and look at the figures. Has this been achieved?
Are you saying you will go or you have been going?
We have been going. We are still going because remember, we're still doing stakeholder participation and getting data. I've told you even today, we're going back to the stakeholders. But what we have done, because I know the next issue will say, oh, but you have already 1 week. How are you going to do it within 1 week? We already have the table of contents for the whole report. So we are plugging, we have teams that are getting these reports and plugging in the data. So we have an overarching or model already of where the data is getting plugged in. And then we're answering the questions. So we can only then say, for example, for the duty bearers in this particular issue, this issue has not been handled. For example, the Audi 2022 election, nothing has happened about it so far. And then hope by doing that report that will be activated.
Okay. Let me ask an establishment question. When we look at the 10-point agenda, it was because two sides came together and they said that this was going to be the sinew that put the country back together after the 2024 protests. That this was the thing. The NADCO report issue had been on before that, coming out a result of Mandamano. Now, what Kenyans were told was that this is what was going to be the panacea for the constant detractions when it came to then conflict over certain things. So it held a certain degree of urgency, right? And agency, by the way. So they also said, this is the thing that is going to bring about peace and we're going to make sure that Kenya is moving into a certain direction. So it's a bit worrisome that, yeah, exactly, a week to the end of this agreement, we're still having consultative action as opposed to implementing certain things. And if the implementers are already existing departments and offices, then one must ask, why have a committee who's just going to go back to those folks and ask them, what are you doing about this? So does it worry you a little bit that we are here at the almost the 7th of March? And the very things that supposedly were supposed to sort out the country's problems are still... You talk about austerity, for example. where have we seen a reduction in some of these things? There's been recommendations to the SRC. Have those actually been implemented? When we talk about, and this is, by the way, just number one of the 10-point agenda. We've not even gone to number two. So the question in terms of the urgency with which this was put together to tell Kenyans that this was the answer should be the same urgency that's applied
We
across
mustn't
board.
have a spurious relationship about that. When it hasn't been reported, it hasn't been done.
This is why we're saying
This is the spurious relationship, which is very dangerous to have. The fact that we haven't reported it, and remember, our reporting mechanism is in the report on the 7th of March. So if we were to say this has happened, where is the context for saying that? We are giving 2 monthly, bi-monthly reports to the principals as we're going on with our work. But the final report that is to hold this. So when are you going to know what has happened? On the 7th.
But
Because
remember
this
that
is-
the phrase here, I'm sorry, Dr.
It's
Sorry,
all right.
the phrase here is full implementation.
Full implementation, and this is so. It's like the way you can say that out of this radio station today, we're going to have 10 guests. That is the plan. You might end up with 8 guests, for example. So it's a plan, and you move towards the plan as much as you can, isn't it? Like what he's asked about, for example, the audit. If it hasn't happened, we're going to report it hasn't happened. If it has happened, it doesn't mean this committee has to be there to say it is happening, and then it has happened. We are coming back, so we must understand that model of what that oversight entails. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened. For example, if we look at the promotion of protection of livelihoods, for example, of the young people, ensure urgent and massive investment in all high sector, potential sectors economy, including the blue economy. We're going to talk the blue economy and ask how many youth, for example, have you employed within this specific period? It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. This committee is not the one going to say, now we have employed these 12. How do we do that? How do we employ? How do we become an employment agency, for example? But somebody is a duty bearer.
So you're
And
saying the committee
beauty-
is asking questions to
Yes.
people who already do this
Duty
work
bearers,
to ensure that they've
exactly.
done their job.
Not to ensure that they've done their job, to check where they are in doing their job. And what we are asking them to tell us is this is the required action. Give us the, for example, if there's been an uptick of employment, we're going to look at the range of the figures in terms of percentage increase, for example, from the NADCO report. We're going to ask from this time to this time, give us your data on the youth who are employed here and what initiatives have you taken. They'll tell us we targeted 30% increment. We only managed 20%. What is the required action to have youth join, for example, the blue sector economy? How many have you been able to employ? What is their background? What in terms of inclusivity we'll be looking? How many PWDs? And these are the issues we are raising. Now, I'd like to understand which other model might be there for us to be able to get to the bottom. So what we're saying is the NADCO report has been there. The 10-point agenda issues which have been put out there are very, very important as well. But in terms of saying that because we haven't reported, they haven't been happened, it's a very spurious correlation.
So that-
very spurious.
Based off how I understand is the committee pretty much acts as plays a supervisory role.
It's a supervisory role, it's a tracking role. It's an overseeing. Remember, it's the committee to oversee. Yes.
So now with all these roles that you've been given,
Yes.
why don't you just, even as you plan to give the report,
Yes.
how would you rate the performance of the implementation of the NADCO report and the 10-point agenda?
I'll give
Where are
you,
we?
yeah, I'll give you a little bit of just insight from some of the data. For example, on the issue of inclusivity, and this is just from initial primary memoranda that you're able to receive, and to the extent, for example, of ensuring that ethnic minorities are on board, at the level of ensuring the PWDs are on board. We are getting patterns from public office that shows that these have been taken in. Recently, we were at the Judiciary Service Commission, for example, who told us that they started off with 3 women and 9 men in the commission. Now it is inverted. It is the other way around, with 9 women and 3 gentlemen within that panel, and we're able to see. So these are changes. And if we don't have a committee like this, many of these changes will not be captured to be explained that these changes have happened over time. So we are capturing those changes and say this is what is happening. There are some issues that come directly and very urgently within the purview, within the context of especially the Mandamano and what happened. And one is the compensation issue. This is under Professor Makau Mutua's docket. We were also speaking to the Attorney General. They have a compensation fund. The matter is in court. They say, oh, nothing is happening. Oh, there hasn't been compensation. There's circumstances around this, which also have to be explained, because for us, the most important thing is to push and make sure that compensation happens. So it becomes a dialogue and an explanation about if we were not doing this role, who would be coming to say? So this is, remember, by partisan process between the two political parties, saying we made this promise, let's come up with this committee just to follow through and see whether this has happened. Then we are talking directly to the principals, we have the PGs, we can then say and initiate and say, for example, on the many pieces of legislation that haven't gone through, can you be able to work on that as quickly as possible? What are the issues? For each of the issues we are saying, what is the level of achievement? How have I achieved? Is it 50%? Is it 70%? Why is it not optimum? So somebody can't ask, but why haven't they gotten to 100%? They'll explain to us why they haven't gotten to 100%. And then we'll see what are the recommendations, what are the suggestions. And yesterday we were able to meet with the civil society organizations as well. We met before the community-based organizations. We've been able to meet the various independent commissions as well, and going through, follow through to see that this, at the end of the day, yes, it is implemented by the primary, because they are the ones who can implement it, isn't it? But we can then come and confirm and check and see to what level. So this is what the overseeing process entails.
All right, let's take a break. It's 27 minutes to 8 o'clock. We're having a conversation today about the committee that oversees the full implementation of the NADCO report and the 10-point agenda. This is what we're discussing this morning on the Situation Room. We'll be back after this break. Don't go away.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
In a world drowning in half-truths, in whispers that masquerade as facts, how do you find the real story? You cut through the noise, you demand clarity. For decades, the Standard and the Standard e-paper have been Kenya's unwavering heartbeat. It is judged every word, every angle, bold enough to challenge and reveal factual above all else. But the truth isn't static. It evolves in every moment, and so do we. Presenting the Standard all-in-one app, your direct portal to real-time news, curated entertainment, and premium content. From the unfiltered truth of breaking stories to the depth of our exclusive investigations. From powerful podcasts that challenge perspectives to the complete e-paper experience in your hands. This isn't just an app. It's your daily dose of pride in Kenyan journalism. It is the trust you deserve. Don't just hear news. Understand it. Live it. Download the Standard all-in-one app today. Be part of something bigger. The Standard. For generations, Kenya's unwavering voice. Judged. Bold, factual. We value your feedback and welcome your comments, queries, and complaints regarding our content. You can get in touch with us via SMS on 22151, call 0719 012 111 or 0732 142 000, or email feedback@standardmedia.co.ke. Our PO Box number is 30080-00100 Nairobi, or deliver to our offices at Standard Group Center, Mombasa Road, Nairobi.
Did you know Ramadan? The start of Ramadan is confirmed by sighting the new crescent moon. Now you know.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
And so we're looking at, why was there a date given for this?
Yeah, I think because of the circumstances of the MOU, the date was given as a highlight to show the progress that has happened within that time. If you notice, the date is actually at the anniversary of the MOU signing that happened on 7th March. But even though the MOU was signed and the date given, the MOU was signed, but the date wasn't given for the report being shared until we were established in August, which was about 6 months ago. Up to now, the 7th. So the MOU starting point and now saying that we're going to do the report on the March is to mark that anniversary. So that by the time we're marking that anniversary, we can take stock of what has happened. For example, some of the issues that we can take stock on, which show that there's an element of progress. For example, is the allocation of equitable share of revenue to the various counties having increased from about 387 to 415 billion, and with a projected increase of about 338 to 450 million. So that will avoid the clawback, because if you look at the MOU signing in terms of the evolution, is to avoid clawback of the gains that have been made, for example. Then the issue of the IBC Election Amendment Election Act 2024, that has been done. Selection committee has been put into place. Some of the various bills, which were the 9 initial bills, including the main constitution bill, and these bills keep changing across the year because they started off as 2023 bills, then they become 2024, 2025, and now some of the bills 2026. Some of them have been able to progress. So they are low-hanging fruits. And even the issue of the compensation, we raised it again within the political parties. And there's a process maybe that we can have where we can be able to fast track from the political parties so that at least this can happen even before, any further ado. So it is, the debt, I think, is really just to mark the anniversary of the MOU. That's why we have it on the 7th of March.
So then when does your mandate come to an end?
The mandate, very interesting question. It doesn't clearly indicate when the mandate comes to come to the end. If you look at the MOU that we have here, it just says that we're going to aim to achieve all this and we'll be given the various responsibilities, and it'll culminate into a report. The committee will commence its work immediately and will submit progress reports to the principals every 2 months and to a joint Kenya Kwanza and parliamentary on a quarterly basis. The parliamentary group will hold its first meeting on 18th August. The final comprehensive report detailing the status of MOU's implementation will be released to the public on March, making 1 year anniversary of the signing.
Okay.
And it ends there.
And the final question in that segment before we go to others,
Yes.
who pays you?
We are very clear that this is a process that is a bipartisan process from political parties, and I was explaining yesterday. For example, we haven't employed any staff within the institution. We have 1 or 2 people who we have been able to take from the political parties to help us, for example, in taking notes and putting everything together. When we have media events, they're covered from ODM by Mr. Itale, from UDA by Mr. Gilo. We have, for example, the structural setup of the political parties. We are getting any sort of support in kind from the political parties. Remember, we're not getting our money directly from the exchequer into this particular committee. The money is going to the political parties for political activities, this being one of the activities for those political parties. All political parties are audited. I've been sitting in those audits for the political party because I also sit as the Deputy Secretary General now for ODM. And the Auditor General will take us through the various reports and give us a bill of health for the particular
So your
activities.
funding comes from political parties?
From the money that has been sent to the political parties already.
Okay.
So we're relying on the political parties. We don't have money directly coming from any exchequer.
Okay.
So okay, with the implementation or overseeing the same, there is other issues that would demand that Kenyans as well plug into this, right? So that calls for public participation in majority of pretty much the entire report. So with regard to public participation, how do you do that? And how does it then get to represent the 55 million Kenyans, right? So that the issues are equally tapped into the final report that you will be giving. Because there is fear out here that NADCO report has been formed to only handle the political class and ensure that individuals at the top are comfortable. But Kenyans today want to understand, with this committee that is there to ensure that the NADCO report is implemented as we approach the 7th March anniversary, how are we represented? How
Very,
are we
very
sure that our
important.
issues have actually been captured?
Very, very important question. And I think, let me start by saying that we've broadened the scope and the berth, not only to the main political parties, because there's main political parties is a majority, yes, but there are Kenyans as well. And there are other Kenyans as well who need to be served by the government and need to be served by the various institutions within the government. So they're very critical. And we have broadened our scope when we've been in the public forums, engagement forums. We are, first of all, ensuring that within the public forums we have categories of the different people, and we're getting a lot of insight from them. Very, very spot on various issues, even including the issues of rights. For example, when we started the public forums, the first one when we started, just when we got there and we started, and we were pointed out to that, who is making the interpretation? We must have interpretation for the long time PWDs, and people are finding their space. And immediately we got somebody to be able to take that, and we were continually doing that. The women from the disadvantaged women, for example, the issue of the youth and being able to articulate the issues of the youth. In each of these public forums, we're trying as much as possible to get in as much of the people that we can be able to. What we are doing, because we'll not be able to cover everybody, even in the public forums that we go in, what percentage are we covering for the whole county, for example? What we are doing is we are asking for memoranda to be brought to us regarding the various issues, because even in the public forums, not everybody is able to speak. We'll go and say, for example, from each of the particular constituencies, from each of the particular sub-counties, be able to give us information. But people will say, and as we escalate the issues, we'll start a forum, for example, and we'll know we'll be there for about 3 hours. We end up being there for about longer time, 6 hours, and people are still. But what has happened in the public forums is when we have explained, because when we start, they say, but what are you doing? Correct? We still have the debt. Now we look at what, for example, the NADCO report says about debt, and this is the national debt, how are we approaching it? The required action is conduct and audit how much has been borrowed in the past and how it has been used. We're telling them that this is what we're doing. We are auditing, we're giving this report, and we'll tell you what has happened. And through that, and that's when we realized as a committee, it's very important to do this sort of reach out and education, so that people know. So they might not be all representative within the public forums and public engagements, but we are asking for anybody, and even in some of those forums, we're saying, please, can you just send your memoranda to us? Just write and give us. And we're asking even for this to be sent via email, for example, at cointencommittee@gmail.com. We're giving the telephone number of the administrators. We want to hear. And the interesting thing about all this is when they've had all this presentations that we have made, they now begin to feel that there's an address that is being made about this. They are pouring out and mentioning some of the issues they've encountered. They're able to speak openly, and we're able to take up some of those issues and most of those issues and articulate them.
Perhaps you can explain just a little bit further for us to understand. Because we may not, and I guess that's why we ask questions, so that we can get it.
This is why we're here.
Now, one of the issues, interestingly enough, in the NADCO report and also twins in the 10-point agenda is this issue of public debt that you speak about.
Yes.
There exists in Kenya a national debt record, which you may be interested to know is not up to date. So if this is one of the issues for implementation by this committee, right, to ensure that the national debt, public debt issue is looked into, and just by your own admission to ensure when was this borrowed, how much is it, and was it actually used for the reasons that it was supposed to be used for. This is why there are departments that exist in the Treasury already. So what I'm hearing you say is that the committee then has been established, amongst other things, to ask the people who are supposed to be doing this work anyway, whether they've done it. If they say no, you come and tell us they've not done it. Or if they say yes, you come and tell us, yes, they've actually done it, and here it is.
And we're not interested in whether they've done it or not done it. Our main thing is to now understand where the debt now lies at, for example, and whether there's been consideration for the reduction of the debt. So we're getting the data from them rather than checking whether they worked or haven't they worked. But then
so
also,
if you don't get the data,
that also then gives us the mechanism for reporting what they've said, because we are.
This is my
auditing
question,
that debt.
because when you come back as a committee and you report, what do you report? that we went to the department, for example, of
Yes.
the debt registry,
Yes.
and we asked them 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
If they don't provide you the data, so essentially what you are is a reporting mechanism to come and say, we went to this department. They actually do not have a conclusive summary of the debt that has been taken over the last 10 years, for example, and they're not able to report. Do you come back now in that report for the 2 months that you give to the principals and then say, actually, we haven't gotten this, so we can't report.
No. We wouldn't be that lame.
So this is the thing that Kenyans want to know. So whether it is debt, or whether it is extrajudicial killings, or whether it is youth and livelihoods, you've said time without number this morning that what you're doing is that you're talking to the stakeholders to ensure that 1, 2, 3 is happening. My question is, should you go and find out that it is not happening, then the mandate loses its potency, because you come and say, actually, we've gone to this stakeholder and yes, they have, or no, they haven't. It's for me, that has to click a little bit harder, because then what do we achieve in 6 months, in 12 months, in 18 months?
So
what do we achieve?
So remember, we're looking at the debt, and here we have the national debt. Yeah, the scope is demonstration of fiscal prudence in management of public debt to significantly reduce it. Conduct audit of how much has been borrowed in the past and how it has been used. So we have the National Treasury, we have Office of the Auditor General. We'll go and ask, what is the debt as it stands? Can you audit this date? Has it increased or hasn't it increased? What efforts have you done to make sure it comes down? What has that worked? What are the proposals for avoiding this situation? We're not coming back to say, oh, it hasn't been done.
Okay, so now when they tell you, so
yes.
do you wait until they give you this information? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Or do you have a time period within which Treasury, the folks at Treasury, come and tell you, actually, well, we've implemented 1, 2, 3. So you take what they have said and you bring it back to the folks.
So what you're asking is very critical.
Yeah,
because remember,
people need to know.
Very, very, yes, and that's why we're here to inform. So remember, our committee is running from August to March, isn't it? By March, we're given that audit report. We should have all the figures. We should have all that information. So from where I sit, I can only say by 7th of August, by 7th of March, we'll be able to say the status of that date. As to whether these people are going to be told, proceed with it, or how do you, it'll have enlightened that there's an issue.
Enlightened whom?
Enlighten the public, because it's going to go to the public, isn't it? And it's going to go to the executive office of the president. It's going to the deaf, and it's going to go to the relevant principal secretaries in the departments, and it's going to the very relevant ministries. So we are auditing how much has been borrowed in the past. So this is the data that we're going to. This is what we've been requested to do. Remember, we also have the mandate of what we are meant to do. Stop the ballooning national bill and ensure accountability, for example, for future borrowing. So again, Auditor General, control of budget. How can this be achieved? So at the end of the day, we are trying to find innovative ways of ensuring that debt does not continue to escalate. It could have been easily escalating, because yes, I understand what you're saying. There are reports that have been done. People can read those reports, but we're putting it all together under what we've been required to do, under the 10-point agenda, where the principals said this is an important critical issue, and we're addressing it from that perspective. They also have powers as principals, and within political parties, some man the various ministries and the various departments. They can go back and explore that option a little bit more. For example, they can say, oh no, this, I think in this area is still limiting. We need to get probably further audits on this issue. That is futuristic, and that decision will be made post the post. But for us, the agenda now, and it's an important one, so that we can say, for example, what we'll be able to establish for now is to say, this debt is not reducing. This debt stands at 12.06.
But we know it's not reducing. We can see. We're right here. People are in Kenya. You can see it's not reducing. If anything, it's increasing.
Terry, one would...
So this is important, what you're saying, that it's not reducing. We'll capture that. We'll say it's not reducing. And then we can still have the conversation of how we can help it to reduce, or how do we move forward from that. It'll be a status quo report. People, Kenyans, are saying it's not reducing. We'll come, if that is the position that we'll find from the data, that it isn't reducing, and then we'll present that it isn't reducing. Or we'll get the data. I mean, from the treasury, they might give different data. Then we now pick up the conversation.
Terry, there is a question that has been asked here by one of our listeners, and I'll just read it the way it is.
Yes.
If the government of Kenya today just implemented the constitution as is, one would not need the NADCO report. Why? Because if you look at the debt situation in the country, we have structures within the constitution that could oversee these. So we have the Auditor General, you have the Treasury, we have Parliament that oversees all the other bodies. You have control of budget, right? You talk about austerity measures. President William Ruto talked about austerity measures after the 2024 Gen Z protest outside state houses, and he said what he was going to do. We're going to tighten our belts and everything. But as opposed to what he said today, what do we see? We can see that traveling for government agencies, Deputy President's office, is high. It is not us. It is the reports that we get from these officers. So one then asks the question, if we have the constitution that if implemented, we do not need the NADCO report, then what is the political goodwill to ensure that the original work that would have seen that the NADCO committee is not there is being implemented? Because NADCO committee, many are saying, is just another opportunity for political class to just do what they do best, play politics. It is not in the interest of Mwananchi. How would you respond to that? Because many are not seeing the need of the committee being there.
Yeah, I'd respond to that by saying, yes, they feel there shouldn't be a need for it to be there, but the reality is that it is there. And the reality is that after the committee, they said, can we have this oversight committee to check what we've done, which is what we are coming in to do.
You don't feel like you are overstepping your mandate, because if you are looking at the audit of the debt, we have bodies within the structure who are doing that anyway.
Exactly.
So where do you fall in?
Exactly. So we are going to have a public platform to report on this. So, for example, even when we are talking to the various people, to what extent do people have the data? To what extent do they have the reality of the situation? A lot of it also comes from their own experiences. For example, the cost of living. People will tell you, oh, the cost of living has gone high. They will talk about the various issues. They will talk about these issues. If you're looking at the Auditor General report, is given as a report. Is it synthesized, for example, to fit into the Wananchi, for example, when we go for our political rallies and we ask, you saw the Auditor General report, what did he say? They will feel that there are certain things, for example, that are difficult for them, but the details thereof will not be there. So what we have been asked to do is to say, the NADCO report said 1, 2, 3, 4 things. Have they been done? We're coming to check whether it has been done or not. We're giving the people who have requested us to do that work to, again, give that report and say, this is what the data is speaking. This is going to be a public report. Yes, the Auditor General report is the public report as well, but through this process, many of our followers within the political parties and others will also be listening in as we churn it down to the reality.
Okay.
Now, what will happen is that, and in the public forums, people are very, very frank and very, very open. And we are hearing them loud and clear. And maybe this is a different process of getting to the same Auditor General report, to get to the same Controller of Budget report, but synthesizing it from a community-based and political environment so that we can be able to dissect and give it to the people.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you feel that this is duplicitous in nature? And I ask this question because they are already established offices constitutionally and also otherwise that do the very same thing that this committee is doing. Let's start from the Auditor General. This is her job, and she's got an entire office that puts together how funds are being spent, where debt money is coming from, and where it goes. She has that report. I'm almost sure that if you asked her today, she would be able to give a compilation of that. But we're still asking questions. The Controller of Budget doesn't allow a cent to be spent unless it is according to budget. I'm also sure that she's got that report if she were to be asked. The county committees made up by the Senate, who constitutionally are there to oversee a lot of these things, they have the pick, they have the pack. They're already doing this work. We have MCAs, county assemblies, who are already doing this work. When we talk about things like extrajudicial killing, which we don't even have the time to talk about today, there are groups like, and we could argue about this as long as the day is, there are groups like IPOA, who already have a mandate to do certain things.
Kenya National Commission of Human
Kenya
Rights.
National Commission of Human Rights, the NCIC, commissions that have been set up where people, committees of experts, have been sitting for years on end to do things. So my question simply, do you feel frustrated? Do you feel that this is duplicity playing out, whereby per diems and salaries and and things like this are being paid for information that's already in the public sphere that we could actually just put and say, if this is the mandate, if this is what you're really looking for, which goes back again, that would bring Kenya back together, then does it really do anything that committees for the last, I don't know how many years, have been unable to do?
In the field of research, you're going to get a lot of data. For example, if you look at the Afrobarometer series, for example, and if you look at Gini coefficients, for example, in terms of inequality, that data is out there. It's not just taken up by one group or one organization to do with it what it's meant to do. Many people will pick various relevant parts of that data and do different things with it. You're talking about the duty bearers that you're mentioning that we are duplicating their role, as though we haven't mentioned that we are getting that information from them. I started by saying that it's the duty bearers that we're getting the information from to synthesize it in the format of the requirements of this committee across the various requirements that are being given, very, very specifically so. So it is true, the data is out there, the duty bearers out there, they have already, how can we duplicate their duty? If we, as a committee, for example, we cannot do the Auditor General report. So I'm not duplicating, for example, the Controller Budget. I'm relying on her report. Various government institutions will extract various data from that report, which is relevant for them. The fact that we're going back to extract specific data across specific variables that we're being asked for doesn't make it a replication. It just makes it a redefinition of what we're using the data and the context for which we're using the data. So data is produced, and in open data systems, for example, this data is always available. So even when you use that data, you cannot say that, oh, why am I using this data? It has already been replicated. I can go and get that data from the duty bearer. The duty bearer has put that data, and we've said it very clearly. I started by this interview by saying that we are going to these same duty bearers, but we're extracting that data in the context for specific recommendations and required action from the NADCO report and responding to that. And you find that there can be a broad set of very many issues. And even the NADCO report and the 10-point agenda doesn't cover that. The Auditor General clearly covers a bigger mandate. The Controller Budget clearly covers a bigger mandate. But for this purpose, we're saying what are the specific issues that we need to be able to pick out the data from. And I did not say that we are the Auditor General, we're not the duty bearers. Or we said the duty bearers are there, and that's where we're going. We're not, how do we collect the report for the Auditor General and make the report? How can we replicate his responsibility? Obviously, we cannot replicate his responsibility. We can only take what he has given, and different people will take it for different reasons. For example, when you go to the Controller Budget and the zero-based budgeting, for example, that they are now engaging in, we'd be able to be interested, how has that worked? So it's really just to be able to give the feedback back to the parties that have sent us to do the work. So the issue of duplication of duty bearers, we cannot be the Auditor General, clearly. We cannot be the Controller of Budget. Okay. They've done their work, and we're using that to enhance our productivity in terms of what we want to be able to give out.
All right. 7th comes very quickly. Dr. Agnes Zani, thank you for being here with us this morning.
Yes.
Chairperson of the committee to oversee the implementation of the 10-point agenda and the NADCO report. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to 7th of March so that we can talk with the nation and we can be able to tell them where we are in this task. Thank you very much.
Asante Sana. Conversations continue. It's 8 a.m.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day.
5 bob? These days it doesn't get you much.